Have you ever wondered if it's easier to design and build a Dynamics 365 or Power Platform applications when we know all the requirements up front? Hi, I'm Neil Benson from Customery Academy. I'm on a mission to help Microsoft customers and partners build amazing, agile Dynamics 365 and Power Platform applications. If you're used to building business applications using a traditional approach involving upfront analysis and design, it can feel scary to let go of that comfort blanket and start building an application knowing very little about what your users need and want it to do when we set out. Here's Tommy Boisvert sharing his concern. Tommy's a CRM business analyst from Montreal, so he's used to analyzing and specifying his users' requirements in French up front. Here he is in his own words.
I understand the concept behind Agile and Scrum, and I never used it because I'm more used to a traditional approach, like analysis, design, customization, development, implementation. And so one thing I like about that is, and even more important with CRM, because it's, as you know, to create something in CRM is very easy, but to update something existing, it's usually a pain in the ass because with all the dependencies and let's say you want to rename a field, you have to delete it and to recreate it. And so it's like simple things like that. CRM is not good when you want to update something existing. I'm a bit concerned that if we use a more agile approach like the Scrum framework, not having the big picture, because let's say we only focus on feature A, B, and C, but feature X eventually, like in 1 year, maybe having known that, I would design something differently today. As it's not super easy to change something in CRM, from a customization standpoint, but also from a deployment, let's say you use a managed solution and then you can have a lot of crap. My concern is if I don't do a full analysis at first and I don't know what's coming eventually, it's more difficult to design the best system, knowing that eventually feature X will be added to the CRM environment.
Thanks for your question, Tommy, and sending me your video. Your Scrum skepticism sounds a little like it's got a couple of underlying assumptions. It's hard to make changes to Microsoft business applications, and Scrum teams don't have a big picture, so they might design themselves into a corner. Let's address these two assumptions to see if we can ease some of your suspicions about building business applications with an agile approach. Firstly, I don't know what your developers have been telling you. I think that Dynamics 365 and Power Apps are easy to enhance in response to user feedback and evolving requirements. Sure, there's a couple of tricky things like trying to change the data type or the schema name of a custom column in Dataverse, but those kinds of examples are fairly rare. In my experience, what's much more common is over-engineering an application in response to business requirements that were written based on user input before the development started and when those users had no experience using your application. Here's an example. I'm working with a local government body who've built a custom application on Dynamics 365 Customer Service involving workers and employers. But they've over-engineered it. They've listened to all the stakeholders' needs and built entities for organizations and employers, as well as contacts and workers. It's really complicated. Users are confused about which records to update, and there are notes and activities everywhere. No one seems to know why it's this complicated, but I bet you if the developers had released some simple features for engaging employers and workers, it wouldn't have got this complicated. That's the danger with designing the system based on a user requirements specification. You're asking the users to tell you everything they need and want at the very point in time when they know least about Dynamics 365 or Power Apps or Power BI. I call it the point of peak ignorance. Often those specifications are overcooked and you end up with an application that's over-engineered. There's no user feedback until UAT, when it's far too late to redesign it, and suddenly you're in production with an app that no one wants to use. Tommy, if your developers are telling you it's hard to incrementally and iteratively add new features to your business application, then they really ought to try taking on an over-engineered system that's in production and try simplifying it. It's like trying to unfry an egg. My experience is that it's much easier to make incremental enhancements based on user feedback. We get that with Scrum because we don't spend a lot of time specifying all the requirements up front. We specify the requirements gradually as the users learn about the application and as the developers learn about the business. We build a bit, ask for feedback, tweak our plan, build a bit more. Okay, let's tackle your second assumption that I think is underlying, that Scrum teams can't see the big picture and are therefore doomed to make some pretty poor design decisions early in the project. There's nothing in the Scrum Guide or the Agile Manifesto that says you can't do a little bit of upfront planning. As you get into my Scrum for Microsoft Business Apps course, Tommy, you'll find a video on user story mapping. It's in the lesson on product backlog proven practices. I love user story mapping at the start of a project. This agile practice helps all the stakeholders visualize our product goal, our application's persona, their high-level requirements, and how those requirements are going to be grouped into production deployments. I take it a step further and forecast the effort involved in meeting each requirement, and therefore I can get the cost and the timeline for each requirement, each release, and the whole project. Whereas traditional approaches take months of analysis, design, and planning, your Scrum team can build a user story map in a couple of days. While our developers were involved in that user story mapping work, they see the big picture. They get a sense of the requirements that are coming later. We ask them to estimate the complexity of meeting those requirements, so they're sketching out a high-level design and coming up with a solution blueprint before we start building. A solution blueprint describes a candidate design of the application's components. I like to include a conceptual diagram and an entity relationship diagram. Now, these details might change as we iteratively learn more about the requirements, build features, and get feedback from our users. But this quick design exercise is enough to keep us out of trouble. Okay, so we still might need to change the data type or the schema name of a custom column, but in the grand scheme of things, I'd far rather have to make those kinds of changes than figure out how to simplify an over-engineered data model that's been baked into an application that's already in production. I hope that helps, Tommy. I look forward to your other questions about adopting and embracing Scrum. If you doubt, disbelieve, or distrust that an agile approach could work for your Dynamics 365 or Power Platform team, let me know. Visit amazingapps.show and send me a message, a voicemail, or a video, and I'll do my best to help you out. Until next time, take care and keep sprinting.